So I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do something the rest of my life, I want to do it because I love it. And, everyone talks about the starving artist and all that. And you're like sort of intimidated by that. Not a lot of, some parents don't always agree with that. But my grandfather was like, go for it.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
You are tuned in to the Creative Frequency. Come with us as we explore the creative process with artists from all areas of the creative spectrum. The Creative Frequency starts now. Hi, everybody. I want to welcome you back to the Creative Frequency. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Kent Tarbox. In this episode, like we do in every episode, we're going to be discussing the multifaceted aspects of creativity. We're going to ask our guests to share personal experiences with their interaction with their creativity process, how they navigate through things like possibly imposter syndrome, anything that they've encountered on their journey along the way. Everything's open. So, with that being said, I don't like to waste a whole lot of time having you listen to me. So let's get on to our next creative journey here. I'd like to introduce today's guest. Today's guest is Sarah Thomas. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. A little bit about myself. My name's Sarah, like I said. I'm a Toledo-based artist and photographer. I've been a photographer probably for, let's say, 15 years. Been in the industry for a while, doing everything from weddings to client work, working with museums and families and babies, all you name it, I've done it. And my most recent endeavor is being an artist, a full-time artist, and stepping away from client work. I graduated from Bowling Green in 2013 with my BFA, and then I got my master's of fine arts at Cranbrook Academy of Art with specific in photography. So then from then I just been, hustling along in my art career, showing in exhibitions around the Midwest during some shows as well. And yeah, happy to be here.
Well, welcome. Thank you. So you introduced yourself. You said artist and photographer.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a separation between?
I guess photographer, they do leak over on one another, but I guess the photographer realm would be in that sort of like client work. That's where it sort of sits in my brain is, I get hired to do events or sort of the hired portion of what I do
Okay.
compared to the artistry of photography.
And the artistry of photography is what to you?
To me, it's my personal practice, right? Really diving in is not the hired part, but the like ever acting like needing to be creative, right? And being an artist is, having that mentality. And photography is my main medium. So that's really what it means to me.
When in your life did this idea of art and photography and this is what I want to do, when did that kind of manifest itself with you?
Well, when I started my undergrad, I actually was in business before. Photography was always just sort of a hobby for me. It was a nice outlet. So then I started taking it a little bit more seriously and was like, okay, I need to decide on a major. And I did not like business. And I was at University of Toledo at the time. So I sort of cracked down and was like, okay, I want to do something that I'm passionate about. And my grandfather sort of intrigued that conversation. It's like, what do you love to do?
Right.
So I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do something the rest of my life, I want to do it because I love it. And, everyone talks about the starving artist and all that. And you're like sort of intimidated by that. Not a lot of, some parents don't always agree with that. But my grandfather was like, go for it. So
Right.
I transferred to Bowling Green and started my career there in the fine art building. And that's where I majored in two-dimensional studies. And, I thought of it as a career, but it didn't really start clicking as an art form until later after my BFA. I knew I wanted to make art, but I was so driven to make money, right? As we
Hmm.
all do after undergrad. So I did client work after client work, said yes to about any kind of client work I could get my hands on. And then there was this sort of turning point, maybe 4 years after undergrad, where I was burnt out. And I always kept my creative side in the background, but I wasn't as focused on it because I was sick of holding my camera after doing, like, 8-hour-long weddings every weekend,
Right.
right? So I wouldn't pick up back the camera to work, right? So I had this turning point. I'm like, "I need to set aside client work. It's burning me out. I wanna get back to my true love of photography." So I pushed client work aside and started working on a portfolio for grad school. And that's where I really started diving into who am I like as an artist
Right.
and really digging deep into what that means for me.
It's interesting. There's certain parallels I'm picking up as I continue to do these episodes, and I've had a couple other photographers on, but I'm a photographer as well, as everybody who's listening to this knows,
Yeah.
and I come from a photojournalism background. I've been a contract freelance photographer, and
Mhm.
I reached a point where I was going to walk away from it as well because it was a burnout factor. It was
Yep.
you can only do so many news events, you can only do so many car wrecks, you can only do so many football games, and my wife was my muse, and she said, "Why don't you shoot for yourself?"
Yeah.
And that was the turning point as well, is identifying that, I can be creative. And I'm gonna be honest with people, and I've told people this before, and I'll say it again. I'm 64 years old. I really didn't start identifying myself as an artist until maybe the last 5 years, just because it sounded foreign to me. It's like, "Well, I'm not an artist. I know artists. I'm in the Jones Building up here in my little Studio 20, and there are remarkable artists out down this hall from me that are full-time everything artists, and I'm not one of them." Well, actually, I am, and I think we all go through that self-identification.
Absolutely.
Um
It took me a while to call myself an artist. At first, it was photographer, right? And taking my
Right,
seriously as a photographer as you like build up your clientele and move through that space. But to really call yourself an artist, that's a really vulnerable and when you were talking about imposter syndrome, very much like, how do I fit into that world, right?
right.
And you love what you do, but, to sell yourself as an art is quite a big leap, and more people will call you an artist before you call yourself one.
That's true, and I think this resonates too, I think, with most everybody who has any kind of artistic endeavor. We're our own worst critics. We're so tough on
Definitely.
ourselves.
Right?
And I can't tell you how many times, and I imagine you've done this too, and share an experience if you have. I've had photos that people have seen in the newspaper, or maybe they've seen in an exhibit or something, and they'll just, "Oh my, that's a great photo." And I'm sitting there going, "That's rubbish. It's crap. I can't believe they even published it." But yeah, I'm terrible on myself. Do you do that? I mean, are you
I
your own worst critic?
absolutely, there's some images that people gravitated I had one that just people loved and continued to want to buy, and I'm like, "I hate this photo." To me, it was, like, one of my more cliché image compositions.
Right,
I was like, "Ah, this is so cliché," and it wasn't even the best quality because I was back then, like, didn't know anything about ISO, right?
right.
Like, "Oh, these are really crunchy images," but people loved it. Um, but that's sort of, like, the vulnerability we have as artists, like, when we're putting stuff out there and, we're just trying to gauge like, opinions and perspectives to see what's
Right.
working, what's not working, and, sometimes, what people see and what you see don't align, and that's okay.
I think it's important to, and I think we all have this through our creative journey. At least I have. Is I went from looking to photograph something that I thought other people would want to see, looking
Mm,
to photograph something that might win me an award. This is outside of the photojournalism
okay,
world, and finding out that if you're doing that for validation, you're not going to get it. Start shooting what you shoot, paint what you paint, draw what you draw, put it out there. Somebody's going to like it,
yep,
somebody's not.
absolutely. I've definitely been in that boat of, like, seeing shows or exhibitions that I wanna apply for and then making work for that, thinking, "Oh, if I formulate this image for this curator or for this juror, I'll get in and I'll get an award." But no, like, probably, like, 90% of the time, I, 1, don't get in the show and definitely don't get an award. It's when, you throw yourself into the passion that you are in the creation of that work
Correct.
that people will see that passion. And honestly, like I had an exhibition recently in May of some of the work that I am the most proud of I have made probably since I started creating. I feel like I've reached a new level and everybody saw that. I've had similar exhibitions, sort of building blocks up to what this work is now. And, I was really insecure about it. I didn't know where it was going. I was just making. And people were like receptive, but it wasn't until like I'm talking about it with so much confidence where, you're happy and passionate about what you're making that people see it and that sells it sometimes more than, creating an image that someone else might like.
To and I found this interesting. This came up in a previous conversation that I don't know if you know Jay Dickerson. Yeah,
Absolutely. We
I had
talked.
Jay on last week. We did a show. And if you talk to Jay, and I kind of understand this, and I'm going to ask you if you do the same thing, the end result, the ending image is there, and that's what we display.
Right.
Sometimes I enjoy the process of getting that image, of
Mhm.
finding that image, just as satisfying as the actual end result. Does that happen to you?
Absolutely. I'm more involved. I love the process of getting there more than like the end result, honestly. Um, Especially with my most recent work talking about at least with where I'm at with my practice is I'm approaching it with a more intuitive factor, which I've never really had or been like, it's not really nurtured as much. We think about a plan or a concept or an idea and we sort of just, build the blocks onto it.
Mhm.
I'm now taking a more playful approach, which I'm having so much fun and like sort of de-stressing myself, taking the weight off, just sort of like throwing myself in because, I think grad school did a number on me of like, you have to know what you're doing. You have to tell me how you're doing this and telling them every step of the process, which, ran me down a little bit, which I
Mhm.
did like making the process. I'm like, okay, how do I make the practice and process fun again?
Right.
So, in my most like past year and a half, I've been really trying to rediscover what my practice is. And I've been really enjoying seeing how that process goes and learning new techniques along the way and throwing myself in to learn new things and giving myself time and grace to learn those new things, which is exciting.
I'm going to ask real quick. Your medium? Are you film? Are you digital? Do you do both?
I'm more digital.
Okay. So am
I
I.
do know a lot of film. I do a lot of more sort of, I guess, both in a sense where I'll use film, but I'll make digital negatives more or less to make different compositions, especially when I'm working with like cyanotypes. So I do a little bit of alternative process as well as digital. So a little combo of both.
Because there seems to be there's a renaissance of film.
Yeah, there.
And as an old gray hair guy that grew up on film, it's like, I don't want to mess with it. I did it, been there, done that.
Yeah, once you've done it, it's great. And I still dabble in it just for fun, not for my art practice, but,
Mhm.
just to go out with a camera for a little bit and see what happens. Sort of nostalgic to, how I used to go about it when I was younger. But yeah, no, there's a lot of people coming around. We have like 3 intro classes now at PG, which is wild. It's like the most we've ever had. So,
In just film,
and just darkroom film, yeah.
darkroom.
Yeah,
Do
darkroom.
in your opinion, do you think knowing you have a limited exposure set, maybe a 24 or a 36 exposure roll, do you think that provides I don't know if it's an incentive, if that focuses you to look at your composition, really understand what it is you're trying to capture, as opposed to what we call in the photojournalism world, spray and pray, right? I mean, I've got a camera now. I have these Nikon Z cameras they can do like 30 frames a second. It's obscene. I'm practically shooting video and I'm
Right,
doing stills. Well,
right,
if you just lay on that shutter at a football game, you're bound to get something.
right.
And so do you think that film, at least when you're out with that, maybe it helps hone your eye?
Absolutely, I think it teaches you to, like, slow down, right? Because you're like, "Oh, I only have 24 or 36 frames," it really programs your brain, "Okay, is this important?"
Hmm.
is what I'm looking at, like, is this what I mean? In my world, we call it, like, we're trigger happy, where you just, like, shoot and do 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 do, but I'm not really thinking about what I'm taking pictures of, and I see this a lot with my students where they're just like, "Doodaloo." I'm like, "Okay, no, you have 36 frames, make it
Hmm.
count." And when you make it count, you can start slowing down your brain because, with our phones these days where you can, do the same thing or you're just taking pictures of everything and anything. So
Right.
I do believe it slows you down. And I also teach 4x5, with the big
Right.
cameras. Those even slow you down even more because now you only have maybe 6 images. And I see a big, sort of switch in my students when they do get to 4x5 too. They're like, oh, I don't have 36 anymore. I only have 6. I'm like, yep.
Yep.
Right. And then in that realm, in my own practice, it has already slowed me down too. I've sort of gone back and forth on that, but I believe because I've done film, I think everyone should try it to
Right.
practice that slow down.
Well, and I hate to say it because this sounds terribly elitist, and I don't mean it to, but you all understand where I'm coming from. Everybody's a photographer today
Oh, yeah.
because everybody can buy a camera. Everybody has a smartphone. And listen, I have seen remarkable smartphone photos. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to dismiss the smartphone. I've used them myself for spot news
Oh, yeah.
and things. I'm not going to dismiss it, but it's almost diluted that, well, I can just grab a camera. And
Mhm.
I've told this story before. When I got into photography, I'm going to go, and as a student at the University of Findlay pointed out to me, in the late 1900s, because I was in high school in 1970s, I graduated in 79.
Oh, 19.
If you had a 35 millimeter camera, you were a rock star.
Mhm.
I couldn't play guitar, so it was the next best thing to meet girls. I mean, I'm going to be serious. I could run around the high school and play with my camera.
Right.
That's not the case anymore. Everybody has one now.
Mhm.
Everybody runs around with one.
Oh, yeah, no, I have my run-in cases with hobby moms that love
Oh
to
yeah,
take photographs on the side, but that doesn't mean everyone's a photographer, and go for it. I love that people are
right.
practicing that, but you also have to understand, there's a separation here still.
Yes,
There might be so many images in the world, and every day everyone's adding to it, but it's what you create that sets you apart, right? A lot of it is that, and, how can you make your eye different? What's perspective to you?
right,
So I think a lot of it is, everyone can go take a picture of a really pretty flower but it's about how you do it. Maybe even about your editing style. I
right.
think there's even because we have so much at our fingertips, even with editing and Photoshop, that you can even lean into that. There's so many different realms to lean into with photography other than just taking a straight up photo, right?
I agree with everything you just said, and it's very difficult now to believe a photograph.
Oh yeah, with
That
AI,
I find very
we're in a
frustrating.
whole nother world now. We're talking
Right.
AI, yeah.
Yeah, I could do an entirely separite show
Oh,
on that, and I'm going to.
that's a whole nother
Um,
hour.
and it's really going to come off as a terrible rant and an old man rage, I'm sure. But when we talk about this, so are you studio based? Are you out in the world based? Are you a mixture? Do you like working in certain environments?
I'm definitely a mixture. I started out in the landscape, and that's really where I got my launching point, understanding all the natural light. And then more recently, after grad school, I started getting more in the studio and understanding artificial light in more controlled scenarios. So nowadays, I do a mixture. A lot of my work still revolves around the landscape and the environment, mainly waterways affected by pollution.
Okay.
So I'll be out in the landscape, maybe like around Lake Erie, Maumee River, really taking imagery, but I'm also doing sort of plastic cleanups and I sort of reuse those plastics in my imagery in the studio. So I use a lot of found plastics, also a lot of manufactured packaging plastics that I use in my imagery. And I'll bring that into my studio where I have controlled environments to sort of use plastics as compositional paintings. That's where I get to
Okay.
sort of be more playful and have fun with in my studio. I'll have like different lighting setups, different colors. Sort of when that's sort of like my in camera work. I love working and doing most of my things in camera than Photoshop. I still
Okay.
do Photoshop and a lot of my work sort of exemplifies, what Photoshop can do.
Hmm.
but I love doing most of my and trying and challenging myself to do everything in camera.
Okay. With your permission, I have on my screen up here, I have a tab open from your website
Oh,
that has an example of some of your work. Do you mind if we flip over to it real quick?
yeah. Go for it.
And I've never done this before, folks. So if it doesn't work, it's my fault. So here we go. And we're going to do this here. So this is from Sarah's website.
Do I
And
get
I believe this is under the category of sleek.
Oh, you're under sleek, okay.
Okay. Can you see this yourself,
I
Sarah?
cannot I do not see
Okay.
your screen.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping people do. What I'm seeing here, what I want to show is I notice you have a plastic, like a plastic bread tie
Mhm.
thing, and it looks like a piece of toast.
Yeah, it's called my bread tab.
Okay. I absolutely love that. And I'm just going to scroll through here just to give people an idea
Yeah.
of what you're talking about with some of your work, how
Mhm,
you combine the photography and the plastic,
mhm.
and for lack of a better term, kind of meld it into something different.
Yeah, so it, like, sort of leans into I like to try and push print into sculpture a little bit,
Hmm.
so it dabbles into both. I really like pushing that, boundary a little bit, and I like to like, a lot of it's really colorful and playful, right? And thinking,
Right.
um plastics and how they were designed to be, attractive and this new invention and something to have in our households to utilize in our homes in whatever form that is, or single-use plastics for convenience. It was a really attractive thing they were doing in like the late 40s, early 50s,
Sure.
and all this was coming about, right? And now we're starting to see all those effects of it coming through. It's permeated our environment, permeated our bodies. It's all over the place. We can't get away from plastics anymore. So I'm sort of bringing it back to the viewer in like a playful, but sort of and seductive, but also sort of repulsive way. So if you stare at it
Right.
long enough, you might be like, trash, gross. Why are
Right.
we photographing trash? Why we, a lot of some of this is thrifted plastic, found plastic, garbage plastic. It's from all over. And if you ever go on my website, there also some of the titles are really punny. Like there's bread tab. There's like my plastic disco. The plastic disco is my newest work. That's where I was talking about where I use the studio and controlled lighting. Like that one's called like a meshy situation.
Right. I've got that. I've got that up as well. So hopefully our viewers
And like,
can see
yeah,
that.
netting a plastic win. So I like to be a little on the punny, humorous side because
Hmm.
the way our recycling systems are sort of humorous because there's all this like pointing fingers, right? Like the consumers need to recycle, but the manufacturers need to stop making the plastic, and everyone's just like it reminds me of like that Spider-Man meme where all three of them are pointing at each other
Right.
and they're all trying to blame each other, but no one's doing anything about it.
Well, it's interesting, and we can. I want to just a brief tangent here on that. I'm old enough to remember the Renaissance to getting away from paper grocery sacks. Right when
Yep.
I was growing up, it was grocery bags, and wow, we got to go to this plastic because we're killing all our trees to make grocery bags.
Right.
Right, and we're going to run out of trees, and these plastic bags were the greatest thing in the world.
Right.
Now they're the most evil thing out there.
Right.
You see them hanging in trees. You see them. So I like the idea of what you're doing is you're bringing awareness to a situation, but you're not shoving it in everybody's face,
Yeah.
but it
Doing
gets
it in
shoved in your face. I like that.
yeah, it shoves it in your face, but in a gentle way.
Right.
And like, this is pretty to look at. Why do I like looking at trash?
Right.
And if you dive a little deeper into the work and my artist statement, it talks a little about too. I like to think about the sort of philosophy of a way or the idea of a way, like where all this stuff goes.
Hmm.
So some of this plastic, I don't know if someone like threw it over a boat and then now it's come back to the viewer's face when I put it in an image, or some of this is from packaging. I've seen that in my box of shoes that I ordered off Amazon, stuff like that. So it's like these small familiarities of knowing that we are one a contributor, but in the grand scheme of things, it really comes down to the manufacturer.
Yes.
That's why I think when we're talking about plastic bags, if you go into the cyanotype tab, you'll see cyanotypes of plastic bags, and they're all thank you bags, which I even find a little bit more humorous because the bag, like, is it saying thank you to you? Is it saying thank you for using me? Is it,
Right.
it's just like, what is it saying? And then it has all these didactics on it saying, like, recycle me at your nearest recycling center or your nearest
Right.
grocery store. But like we all know, like after some stories were coming out, some grocery stores don't even recycle them. They just throw them in the trash
Right.
anyway.
Reuse and recycles on one of them. Again, I'm showing your
Yeah.
cyanotype page. I find it interesting when we talk about the bags here real quick, and it's interesting. And I told people, I warned you at the beginning of the show, we can vary here. How quick cashiers are in stores and that to put one item in a plastic bag. You want that in a bag? No.
I know.
No, I don't need that in a bag. I'm quite capable of carrying this one little box out to
Mhm.
my car.
Right. Yeah.
Or and we do have, the carry on, we carry our own little shopping bags in.
Oh,
So I find that interesting though. I love your work, and I'm going to point out to everybody here that at the end of all of this, Sarah's all her social feeds and her website and everything will be in the show notes and everything. You
great.
definitely want to go out and take a look at her work. When you go out to photograph, or when you go into your studio or anything, is there anything you do to get yourself in a headspace? Do
Hmm.
you is there some days you wake up and you're like, I'm just not feeling it, so I'm not doing it?
Oh yeah.
Or so
They
what do you do?
There's definitely times, a lot of times I just, like, go on a walk. A lot of times just to clear my head, so to decompress wherever I'm coming from, if that's work or an event or something like that, to get myself in space. I like working a lot at night. It's a really quiet time, right, to
Uh-huh.
think about, mainly go on a walk, or I like to eat food, like my favorite food, I guess. Make sure I'm
Okay.
fed so I'm not cranky. To be realistic, but that's about it, and then I just sort of, I always try to make time too, and I get to a busy schedule, and, it's really important to me just like with anything else, like, you schedule yourself to go to the gym or whatever your routines are, that it is part of my routine, and there's no sacrificing of that time, like, that
Okay.
is so a lot of times I have to make sure I plan that because easily if someone's like, "You wanna go to dinner?" I'm like, "No, I got time. My time is booked." So,
Right.
I can get really busy and just say yes to a lot sometimes.
And then people like me call and take more time. Um, it takes it away
No,
because it was Sarah and I. It took us a while to get this scheduled
it
because she's a
did, but
very busy person. Do you have a particular instance that you can recall that was just such an inspiring experience for you that you're going to carry that through your life, or does it just kind of roll?
it just sort of kinds of roll, like, everything I sort of I think as a creative, we're always sort of absorbing, right?
Hmm.
And I'm very much a sponge. So I don't think there's like one specific instance that inspired me, but when it comes down to it of wanting to make decisions for your life and for your practice and um, for your photography, I think you're always sort of pulling from the things that you are hearing, the people you're talking to, and that's really crucial for me as a motivator, I think, to keep the ball rolling and thinking about how to apply certain things or challenge yourself because you don't want to be complacent, right? As an artist, I
Right.
think as an artist, we should always constantly be one absorbing, researching, sort of, challenging ourselves. I think, at least for me in my practice, that's what keeps me interested and keeps my ball rolling. Is okay. I mastered this. What can I do next? Where else could my work go? What could I achieve? Like with this newer work, like last year, that's when I was really dialing in cyanotypes. This year is 3D printing. So I've been really teaching myself how to 3D print and pulling from people and resources and having conversations with them. I think I think your community, your network is really helps me keep the ball rolling. I love having conversations with artists. That's why like this podcast is perfect.
Thank
To
you.
listen to people like think about their ideas and their process because this is so crucial to, understand what everyone's going through and that you're not alone.
Right. Now, all of this has been very positive and very upbeat, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
What happens when you hit that roadblock? And I'm going to assume that you have,
I have,
because we all do.
yes.
What is your recovery process? How do you manipulate the roadblock? How do you get through it?
Yeah, no, I hit one real hard. Just to give context to how hard. Um, well, 2020 hit, right? Everything shut down, and that was my graduating year of grad school. So essentially, I did not get to have my thesis show that I wanted. I did not get the
Right.
graduation I wanted. So, and and I'm not the only one that went through that, right? But
Right.
that year also, I like moved back home. I moved in with my brother, and we had a house fire that same year, and I lost all my camera gear.
Oh, no.
I lost everything. I didn't lose all my artwork, luckily, I stored that somewhere else, but I did lose all my camera gear, and I just, wanted to give up so bad. I'm like, "How am I gonna pay for this? How am I gonna rebuild?" I did not insure my equipment, so if you're out there, make sure you have insure your equipment. Luckily, I did have renter's insurance that helped a little bit, but I didn't
Right.
get everything back. And so I was in a really depressed mode. I just, I had to take myself out and just give myself grace for the time period I needed to grieve for whatever I needed that time. So I would say it's okay to take your time off if you need to. But you just need to not give up totally. And what kept me from that was my circle, my people. I started continuing my friend Anthony McCarty, he's a painter here. During COVID, we would have Zoom meetings to talk about art, and he sort of, kept me afloat in a way, and not in like, therapy, but, we talked about art practice, and he was my person to talk to inspire me to keep going. And a lot of it too. So I started applying for grants. I was like, okay, if I'm gonna get started again, I need money. My 2020, like there weren't any jobs, and I had just graduated. I'm like, I need money. How do I do this? So, I had some lovely friends who helped me write a proposal for a grant through the Arts Commission here in Toledo, and I was awarded that money and was able to buy all my gear and more. I bought even a light kit that I've always wanted. So, I feel very honored and privileged to have been awarded that to rebuild and, get back going in the studio. So, and another book, I will say, a book that I recommend if you're ever in a rut, and sometimes I get in these ruts still, is reading Art and Fear by John Berger. That one's really good because it talks about sort of your vulnerability of like wanting to just drop everything you're doing and the fear behind it and the fear behind maybe starting again or the fear of starting at all. It's a book I recommend to my students. It's something I keep in my pocket. It's a short read too. It's nothing too lengthy. It's a nice little pick me up, if you say.
I appreciate that because when I started thinking about doing a podcast, and first of all, I'm like, okay, this seems to be, and again, I'm an old boomer. This seems to be this is the territory of the young. This is the TikTok generation, the online generation. This is what these people do. I have no idea what I'm doing, but there was something that just kept nagging me and saying, you like to talk. First of all, I like to talk. So that helps.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, you would never know that. And Sarah and we have met prior to this as well. We'll get into that in a few minutes. I do art intake for the Findlay Art League, and I get to talk to all these artists that come in and artists from all mediums. And I find it interesting what they have to say. And, we're not all tortured souls. Not everybody comes in after a 10-day binge of bourbon and Marlboro cigarettes and that where people have jobs, they're retired, they're art teachers, they're whatever. And it's so interesting. I thought, I just want to talk to these people. And you find out, and what the common thread seems to be working through, you are going to be episode number 8, I think, is community. And not being afraid. There's two things there. It's community and I think I can get away with this on YouTube. And there's kind of what the hell with it. I'm going to give us a try and see what happens. I don't know if I'm ever going to become a YouTube millionaire. I don't know if I'm really doing it for this, but I'm getting such satisfaction from this. And hopefully I'm exposing people to artists and exposing people. And if we can tweak one person to say, I can do this, or maybe I want to get back into this, hopefully I can accomplish that with my guests. I'm not doing this by myself by any means. So I find the community aspect very, very positive and a continual theme. And again, you demonstrated that brilliantly with you had a friend and you have a tribe and these are my people. And that's what it takes. It's not easy doing this. It
No,
looks easy, but
no,
it's not sometimes.
it's not easy. No, you gotta put yourself out there, and that's really vulnerable and really scary.
Very vulnerable.
Like, not only just putting the art out there and, like, not showing your face, but also putting your face out there.
Yes.
It's the hardest part, right?
Especially in this day and age where there's such an anonymity to being online that you can
Absolutely.
post
Yeah,
tweets and you can say really nasty, mean things to people and stuff that you probably wouldn't say to their face.
alright, and
When Go ahead.
oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah, but when you create something, that's one thing. But when you create something and you stand next to it and you open yourself up to criticism,
Mhm.
uh, you got to have a pretty thick skin.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't take it personal. And this is interesting. And
Well,
maybe this might be a time to segue into it a little bit. For those of you that don't know this, Sarah has also done she's judged one of our shows at Findlay Art League. It was the photo show. And she came in and she was our judge. And this is not why she's on the show, but I'm going to say it. I chair the photo show. So I'm actually in the gallery while she's judging. I don't say a word. I'm just sitting there at the table because I keep my mouth shut. And she comes around with her lists of where everybody placed. And she said, well, and number 40 is best of show. And I said, well, that 40, that sounds familiar. That's mine. And then I'm thinking, what the hell were you looking at? Because, and this is why we're going to talk about this judging thing.
mm,
A show prior to that, that exact same image was juried out.
it wasn't even in the show at all, was
Wasn't even in the show. So I'm going to ask Sarah, and she's been kind enough to say she's going to let us inside a judge's mind. If you could take 5 or 10 minutes, whatever it takes here, take us through your process, because I know every artist out there wants to know what judges are thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
So go ahead, take us through your process, if you would, please.
Yeah. Well, I'll preface this with, everyone has a different perspective, right? What I perceive and what I jur is different than, other jurors. So that might be why that happened. So it's really all about perception. Even on the outside, if you're not a juror, you're perceiving art on a whole different level and might be thinking about it completely different. You're bringing your own backgrounds, your own expertise to everything that you look at, right? So a lot of that is where I derive from. And so when I start, looking at work, I sort of do a single pass, as if I am just a average person walking through the gallery. But, I'm still bringing my expertise and my background forward as I move through the gallery. I'm like, okay, what caught my eye? What would I go back to? Because in the grand scheme of things, right, most art you only are going to look at for maybe 30 seconds or less, usually less. So if something can hold my eye, if that's anything from composition, color, to the subject matter, that's what I'm really looking at initially. If it even grabs my attention to come back to and spend more time with it, that's huge. Um, and a lot of it too with my technical background, and then I'm looking at technicality. A lot of the technicality I'm looking at first too. That's just my way, like, I don't wanna, like, diss any amateurs or anything, but,
Oh,
if anything's, like, blurry or low resolution or something, I'm not gonna really come back to that because 'cause I'm too distracted by the lack of technical skills to come back to that, just to be upfront. And that's just a critique, and we gotta take in critique as, like, you know what? Maybe that's what I need to work on. But if something, again, can grab my attention, I'm coming back to it because there's, you know certain kind of lighting techniques that are gravitating towards you. There's a movement in the piece that's moving my eye around. There's colors that are being adjusted in a really dimensional way. So I'm looking a lot of it from a technical point, but I'm also trying to look at it from a conceptual point. As a fine artist, like I am trying to wonder what the meaning is. And if you can hold me there long enough to ask at least 2 or 3 questions about what that meaning might be, you're doing a really good job of, bringing that forward. And I might answer those questions myself, or I might go to the artist and read their artist statement to answer those questions. But I don't read any of the artist statements. I don't even think we're supplied artist statements most of the time when we're looking at the art and trying to judge it. Um, again, it's from 2 different points of view, technically and conceptually, of what I'm trying to bring forward. So that's a little insight of what that means. And, when I was during that photo show, there was something about your technique and, how sharp the images were, and your printing, the black and white, like, I don't know, I'm still like, as much as I'm a digital color person and I love color, that black and white image really drew me in really
Thank you.
specifically in a really elegant way. It just, like, I kept going back to it. So, again, if you can pull me back, rein me back in for a few more looks, you're doing really well.
Well, there you have it, folks. Now we know. Because anybody who's experienced any kind of art show, and I don't care if it's, if you're Findlay Art League to Toledo Museum of Art to Ann Arbor to whatever, you're always kind of wondering, what are they
Yeah,
thinking?
right.
You know?
I think it's really important too, like, as, people are applying to shows, you wanna, research your juror too. Again, don't make work for your juror, right?
Right.
You don't wanna make it for yourself, but, think about where they're coming from too, perspective-wise, and, what work might fit your work fits in that dialogue that they might be coming from.
Okay. I want
Yeah,
to ask this, and I'm gonna lay a little groundwork. So, at the Findlay Art League, just so everybody knows, when a judge comes in, each piece of work there's a number, and then we've started doing this at the request of a couple of judges or jurors. I never know what to call them, judges, jurors. I hear it both ways.
yeah.
They want the name of the piece, okay, and that's it. They don't know who did the work. They don't know anything, and they're not hung side by side. The photos are randomly hung throughout the gallery. And when we first started talking about putting the title, and it's on a sticky note. It's not very elegant, folks. I'm telling you, we're going to tell you how the sausage is made. It's little yellow Post-it notes with a number and a name. And I'm not kidding about that at all. Does the title of the work have an impact for you? Do you take the title of the work into consideration?
I absolutely do. I think it's really important to think about title because that leads me to maybe what the concept might be. It gives me a little insight of what the artist might be thinking or projecting that idea of what I should be looking at and what I should be taking away from that image, right?
Okay.
So I think it's really important. I think titles lean into that. I know, some people take titles seriously as an artist, and I see a lot of untitled stuff too. But if you can, when you're applying to shows at least and putting work in shows, I think a title is pretty necessary, especially if that's all the information the juror's going off of.
Mhm.
It should have some implication of, what is your viewer trying to take away?
I'm going to ask, and you can decline to answer.
Yeah.
Have you had a piece that fit all of the criteria? You went back to it 2, 3 times. You asked the question, it held your attention, and you looked at the name, and it was untitled number 42. Did that would that and you don't have to answer if you don't want to. Would that is that a hit, or do you walk away from it if it's not titled?
No, I don't walk away if it's not titled.
Okay.
Yeah, no. If the work speaks for itself without a title, that's even better, you know?
Okay.
If it's untitled and the work is keeping it open-ended for a reason, but I get a really large takeaway from it, then that's doing a really good job. Then maybe you don't even need a title.
Okay.
You have to have a really impactful piece to do that.
Okay. That's so there you go, folks. If you don't know how to title your work, just make sure it's a damn good piece of
Really
work.
good.
Because listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I struggle with titles. Okay. I've tried a variety of things. I don't know if I want it to be whimsical. I don't know if I want it to be this. And as you can see in my background here, and I'm working on getting a new background, folks. I've only been in my studio up here doing this for a couple of weeks. Things are still in process, hence the really boring white wall.
Is that
And
your
where I'm
re-
at, you can't nail anything into these walls. I do abandoned buildings and I do abandoned things and stuff. And you try to name it. I mean, what is it? Abandoned barn number 5. I don't know. Uh,
I don't know, some people do, like, abstract names, some
mhm,
people do, like, logisticals, like, at the corner of, like, whatever, Bancroft and Door, or,
right.
like, I have one named, like, the Bancroft bag because I found this bag on Bancroft. And then more recently, I've been just having fun with because I'm in a playful practice right now. A lot of my titles are puns that I just have fun
Okay.
with, so I have a little bit of humor. I just have fun with my titles these days, or I make them logistical.
Right. And if anything we've learned from this conversation, anything goes.
Yeah,
And that's the wonderful thing about doing what it is we do.
right.
I want to thank you for being very honest and upfront about that, because you don't know how many artists, and you do because you've been on both sides.
Yeah.
You've talked with other artists who are like, I don't know what they're thinking. I want to know
Yeah.
what that judge is thinking. What was that judge think? What do they think? How do they do
It's
this?
really hard, and I know what it's like to not be juried in a show. I've been shut out of shows before, and then I've been
Hmm.
welcomed to shows I never thought I was gonna get in, you know? Really, every juror is different, but I think that's really the basis, is really capturing your juror.
It is.
And you
And
gotta know them a little bit. Do some
right.
research on them.
That's now, I don't know if I've not done that, but I will do that in the future. And because, and I made light of this one other, and I was in a show, and I'm not going to name the gallery, but when my wife and I went over to the opening, we were thoroughly convinced that the juror had a thing for cows, because there had to be 14 different images of cows,
Yeah,
just cows, and I'm like, okay, there's a
I
theme
mean,
here.
some jurors have their own little niche. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like, your
Right.
abandoned stuff, your abandoned subject matter really pulled on my heartstrings because that's where a lot of my imagery started when I
Oh,
first
thank you.
photography, and I'm, like, a sucker for abandoned photography.
Well, thank you very much. You're gonna judge our next show, and I'm just gonna flood it with no.
Please.
But you're always welcome to come back and endure
I
another show.
enjoyed it. Thank
We
you.
always appreciate it. We're gonna wrap up on time here. I'm gonna ask you one thing real quick. Is
Mhm.
there anything I haven't asked you that you'd like people to know about Sarah, or you want people to know about your creative process or the creative process as a whole?
Well, I guess a little bit about, um, we were talking about critique, some of the hardest things is getting critique or, maybe not getting accepted to a show, which feels like a really harsh critique of getting shut out of, and, maybe someone doesn't like your work but they're not telling you why. Take critique, as, I'd say, like a grain of salt, but also, take in consideration as it a challenge. We don't always need to have like tough leather skin when we go into art shows and people critique us, or even at school if you're getting critiqued, if you're a student. I mean, we're allowed to cry about stuff if we're not, um, being accepted into the world, and that's okay. I think as long as you stick to your guns as an artist and you stay passionate about what you do and stay true to yourself, you'll have a long-lasting creative endeavor, and doesn't really matter what other people say. I think that's the biggest thing. My takeaway as an artist is just staying true to yourself no matter what, and sticking to your guns and what you believe in, and using your work as your voice. My work talks a lot about the environment and the impacts of plastic, and I'm really passionate about that and advocating for that. So, you know, because I'm advocating for this side in my world, I'm pulling into my artwork and using it as a guiding voice in the world, and it can really make open some doors for you, as long as you stay true and passionate, and it's
Thank you.
okay to be in a rut if you need to be in a rut, but
Right. It's
it ha
if I've learned anything, it's not a constant. It is, and that's kind of why I named this frequency, because it can go up, it can go down, it can be
and
very intense.
yeah,
You can have moments when it's not.
it's not
And
always
and I've learned it's a journey. It's just a process, and it's a journey, and I guess I don't know when it ends. I don't really. I'll find out someday, maybe, and maybe I'll go down swinging. I don't know. But in the meantime, I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm going to keep producing, and I want you to keep producing.
Yes.
And I want to thank you for taking your time and being very open and honest with us about your process. So thank you again, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for
To
having.
everybody else, pardon me, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying thank you for having me, and thank you for making this podcast happen.
Thank you. And for everybody else out there, the way I end these, I'm not a big button person. You know what to do. You do the like, the subscribe, the follow thing so that you can be part of the creative frequency and we can just continue to discuss the artistic process and the world around us. So with that being said, I want to appreciate Sarah and her time for being here. So thank you very much. Until the next time, folks, we'll see you from the creative frequency. Thank you for tuning into the Creative Frequency. You know what to do. Like, follow, and subscribe. Then join us again for the next episode of the Creative Frequency.